Okay, I believe the live stream has started. Good afternoon, everyone. It is Tuesday, February 14th. Happy Valentine's Day. This is a meeting of the Local Revenues Subcommittee, and we have three bills on the agenda for today. House Bill 231, House Bill 235, and House Bill 236. We are going to start with the two bills related to tax sales. All three of these bills today are for discussion purposes only. We will not be voting on them today, but wanted to get everyone's questions and comments and make sure we have time to deal with these bills the best we can. So let's start with House Bill 235. This is Delegate Kaiser's bill to extend the deadline from 4 months to 6 months for properties in tax sale in terms of the time that is free from any additional expenses in being charged. We had testimony from several folks in support as well as testimony in opposition, and one favorable with amendment, with that proposed amendment being instead of increasing from 4 months to 6 months to go to 7 months, which would be consistent with the existing provision for owner-occupied properties in Baltimore City. So let me just open it up to the group to get a sense of any questions or comments, or if folks want to share what they're thinking about this bill. Okay, Delegate Hornberger.
Yeah, I was just gonna put a finer point there. I had some, concerns of extending the timeline out. With some of the testimony that we heard is that it may incur additional fees or higher interest rates. Just want to make sure absolutely clear that this is just a window of time and in no way impacts a higher financial burden for the person that's in foreclosure.
Okay. That is my understanding, but Stan, can you confirm that for us?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the longer somebody waits to redeem, the more interest they're going to accrue. But, the current law says you can't, you don't have to pay any additional expenses of the purchaser for the 4 months after the tax sale. And this would just say you don't have to pay any expenses of the purchaser for 6 months after the tax sale.
Okay.
So it doesn't delay in any way the property owner's ability to redeem. It just gives them a longer window before those additional expenses start coming on board. Is that right?
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
So one point I just wanted to mention, actually two issues that came up as we were looking at this bill. One is, so there's the requirement for a 4-month period in the statute, and then there's a 7-month period for owner-occupied properties in Baltimore City, right? As drafted, this bill would extend the 4 months to 6 months on all types of property. One question that came up in my mind was, should that extension really be focused on owner-occupied properties? If the goal here is to help homeowners stay in their homes, would focusing it on owner-occupied properties make more sense? So happy to hear if anyone has thoughts on that. Delegate Grossman.
I would agree with that. If that is the intent of the bill, I would want to make sure that we don't unnecessarily open it up outside of homeowners. So yeah, I would agree.
Okay. And Delegate Merrick North.
Yeah, along those lines, if that's the intent, then certainly, I guess I wasn't clear from our review of the initial testimony. Was that articulated? That was indeed the intent of the bill to only focus on owner occupied, or was that not clear in our the testimony we heard?
So I think, I don't know that it was explicit in the testimony we heard. I think that's generally been the intent of, of much of the work we're doing around tax sales. I did have a chance to touch base with the sponsor, and she seemed fine with that, change, but I want to make sure it's the will of this subcommittee as well, if we look at that.
Oh yeah, then certainly I agree with that.
Okay. And then the other change, which I want to mention, I'm waiting to hear back, but in looking at the existing language in the statute, we're just changing a 4 to a 6 in this bill. So it's pretty simple, but if you look on page 2 of the bill, in paragraph B, lines 21 to 28, there's this long list of counties where this applies, and it turns out it's everywhere except Talbot County. So I did speak with the delegates from Talbot County to see if while we're at this, if they want to go ahead and extend this to Talbot County as well, since it applies everywhere else in the state. So they just wanted to touch base with the local government there, but I'm expecting to hear back from them. We may make that change as well. Any other questions or comments from committee members? Okay, now I do see that Mr. Boston, you are eager to share something.
Yes,
is it a clarification or correction?
Well, it's not. It's a comment on the 4 to 6 months. I'm not sure the committee realizes that the interest accrues more from 4 to 6 months, so it's going to be more costly for the potential homeowner, or even if you're dealing with vacants and abandons. When you move to 4 to 6 months, the interest will increase as opposed to it. And most
I said that.
Really,
So
yeah, I'm sorry.
I'm just saying I did say that, but
Okay.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, and most properties are being redeemed already at the 4 months, and so if you move to 6 months, if you move 4 to 6 months, then you're going to have to move to 6 months to the 8 month. So you effectively. Well, let me ask you. That's a question for the committee.
So
right now, 4 and 6 months. Are you going to move what is currently 6 months to 8 months?
That is not part of this bill, no. So I think that's the 6 month period is not a limit on the property owner.
Right.
Right.
Oh, I'm sorry.
They can still redeem at any point within that 6 months.
Sorry, I didn't have my face on. Yeah.
Is that correct, Stan? They can still redeem at any point within those 6 months. So there's nothing forcing the homeowner to accrue additional interest charges. It's simply delaying when charges other than interest can be added.
That's
right.
Correct. Exactly. Yes.
That's correct.
Okay.
My client Heidi Kenny is more of an expert than me. Heidi, I don't know if you wanted to say anything.
Sorry, I think they captured it. It's the interest continues to accrue regardless of when the expenses kick in, but the majority of people redeem once they get our first notice, which we would not be able to do until after 6 months.
Now, is that, Stan, can you verify I guess I'm not sure, or Ms. Kenny, if you can clarify, why would the first notice not be able to be sent until after 6 months?
Because you're telling us we can't incur expenses, and the only way we can send notices is by notifying any party that has an interest in it by running a title search, which in the tax sale, when the bills go out, they go to the property owners. But when we do a title search, we are able to notify anyone who has an interest in it. And that's what the first 4-month mark is, with the attorney's fees and title search fee being added on, because then we're able to determine who else may have an interest in redeeming the property other than the property owner.
Okay, so you're not prohibited, but
Yeah.
you can't send the notice without incurring an expense, and you're not going to choose to incur that expense if you can't recoup it. Is that accurate?
100%.
Okay. Thank you. Delegate Long.
Thank you. My question is similar. If we extend this by 2 months, is this going to add, how will this affect the final disposition of the property? Don't they have a timeline when they have to redeem? I mean, they have to finish foreclosures, filing all the paperwork and everything. Go ahead.
So the and Ms. Kenny can correct me if I'm wrong, but you have to file, if you're going to file for foreclosure, you have to do that, I believe, within 2 years. But then that process only has to be begun within those 2 years, and it can go on much longer. The property owner has the right to redeem at any time up until a court actually enters a judgment of foreclosure. So that just continues throughout the whole process, that they have the right to redeem. The bill title is somewhat confusing and misleading in that it refers to a deadline, and that's not really what this is about. This is just, as we were saying, it's just extending the time period during which somebody can redeem without having to pay the expenses of the purchaser.
Right. But as you had said, this could also add to the cost of the homeowner to redeem the property if they wait the extra 2 months, because they'll be paying extra interest on it. Am I correct?
That's true. I mean, that's true. The law, throughout the period in which they can redeem, if they wait longer, you pay more interest. That
okay.
is true.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Any other questions on House Bill 235 for discussion, or are folks ready to move on to House Bill 236? All right, looks like we're moving on. House Bill 236. This is regarding adding an outreach campaign for the state tax sale ombudsman. We had, I think, no unfavorable. We did have some favorable with amendments to, I think, mainly looking at expanding to other types of outreach besides phone calls. Is that correct, Stan? Am I missing any other key points in the proposed amendments?
That's the main one. Most recently, the ombudsman reached out to say that they might be interested in doing this internally themselves rather than contracting with an outside entity to do it. And so that's a minor friendly amendment that they suggest for consideration.
Okay. So want to get a sense of what people are thinking about this bill. It does have a fiscal note that would require us to get permission from appropriations to move this forward. So wanted to just, check in with committee members if you're how you're feeling about this and also see if there were any other questions. Delegate Long. You're still on mute, Delegate Long.
Thank you.
Yeah.
If it's going to stay in-house and the ombudsman is going to do this work, will it still be a cost incurred? Because you said there was going to be, anyway.
Yeah, my guess is yes, but we have Mr. Yeager with us. If you're able to speak to what you envision.
Sure. Thank you, Delegate Feldmark, Chair Feldmark. Bob Yeager, State Tax Sale Ombudsman. Delegate Long, the amendment that we were proposing would just allow us the option of either using a vendor or doing it internally. We may have the time to do the outreach ourselves, and that would remove the middleman in the process of, like, rather than, we'd be able to reach the homeowner directly or make those outreach efforts directly. We may not have the time, but the amendment would just give us the option. As far as the difference in cost, there would be likely a difference. However, if we were doing it internally, we may use a contractual staff member to help with making the phone call. So there would be additional expenses either way, whether we used a contractor or did it in-house. But it probably would be somewhat less expensive if we did it internally. But the amendment would just allow us to either do either or, to either use a vendor contractor or to do it internally.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Any other questions or comments on this bill? Are folks generally feeling supportive or an interest in seeking appropriations permission to move it forward? All right. So yeah, thumbs up and some nodding. So, all right. Okay. Well, we will continue that conversation. Thank you. And our third and final bill for discussion today is House Bill 231. And this is a Baltimore City bill authorizing the city to set special tax rates for property taxes. And Stan, do you want to start off with a little bit of just background for folks on how the different property categories and rates work, and just a little bit of background on that you had shared with me?
Sure, happy to do that. Yeah, so in Maryland, counties have to impose one property tax rate for real property. Municipalities do have the authority under state law to create different classes of property and impose different rates on those classes. And then just generally, other states, I did some research a couple of years ago. Actually, it was only in 2021. And we looked at all of the states and how they deal with real property classifications for real property taxes. And what we found was that the vast majority of states either don't classify or they require local governments to adhere to certain specific state classifications that are set out in state law. And those classifications are usually fairly limited. Often agricultural property is one of them, sometimes commercial, industrial, residential, and so forth. There's only a few states that allow local governments to create any classes that they choose and impose different rates on those classes. So Hawaii is one that allows that. Illinois allows it, but only the city of Chicago or only Cook County actually exercises that authority. And then in New York, the city of New York and Nassau County have certain special classifications that are actually set out in state law that apply only in those counties. But that's the gist of the research that we did a couple of interims ago.
Any initial questions or comments from subcommittee members? Now, I think one of the priorities here that we heard from the testimony was really to be able to have a tool to help deal with vacant properties. And is that, Stan, can you help us understand how this would give the city better ability to deal with a special tax rate for vacant properties?
Right. So right now they, as we were saying, they only have one real property tax rate. So if you pass this bill in some form to allow them to impose a special rate on vacant and abandoned properties, they could set a higher rate on those properties. And the testimony was that they thought that might incentivize the owner to go ahead and fix them up so that they don't have to pay the higher tax rate.
Any other questions, thoughts? Anyone considering potential amendments here? All right, Delegate Grossman.
Sure. So the only, I guess, question I have, knowing that this isn't a challenge only to Baltimore City, would be, should we consider this being a statewide bill instead of just a city-specific bill? There are other municipalities and cities that also are struggling with, what to do with those tax sale properties or vacant properties in their community. And I apologize if that's not an appropriate question for subcommittee, but just something that kind of sparked to mind for me. I know my community especially struggles with those properties.
Can I just mention municipalities already have the authority to do this if they want to, but counties don't.
And I think to your broader point of taking a local bill and amending to make it statewide, I'm not sure. I'd certainly want to discuss that with the Baltimore City delegation and the sponsor before we would attempt that. I know later today we'll be hearing one of my bills, which is actually a statewide version of a bill that was a local bill last year. So that may be another possibility if you want to look at applying it in other areas, but we can certainly look at that. Delegate Long.
Yes, does this bill specifically target vacant and abandoned properties in the language?
So the bill as drafted does not. It would give the city the authority to adopt policies to target vacant and abandoned properties, but it's not, as drafted, it's not limited to that. Is that?
I would like to ask, would it be beneficial to add that language to this? That it would only be special taxing for abandoned and vacant properties?
I think that is a possibility. I mean, that's sort of the purpose of this discussion, is to kind of, hear people's thoughts on those kinds of ideas.
Because I'll be honest with you, I did have a little heartburn the way the bill's written, and I think I could feel a whole lot better if it actually identified, vacant and abandoned properties.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other thoughts or comments on that? Or any other aspect of the bill? All right. Well, I appreciate folks taking the time to check in. It is almost 12:30 and I want to make sure you have time to regroup a little bit before we meet in the committee room for bill hearings at 1. So thank you for everyone's time and consideration, and we'll continue to work on these and hopefully be able to vote on some things at a future subcommittee meeting.